Good morning. This week, for the last 2 weeks, I've been looking at Mothership sci-fi horror role-playing. This is a rules light game, very much in the vein of Alien and Firefly. Uh, it's a cute little game. The player's survival guide is just 44 pages, less than that when you take the covers out. Um, 1 second. There we go. Now, one of the I think Mothership is perfect for solo play, and part of the reason for that is it's so rules light. Um, the difficulty and why this is taking me so long to create is the fact that your crew on the Mothership is really important, mechanically as well as for play. Most games you can strip it down to a single hero, a single adventurer quite easily. You scale down the encounters, scale down the treasure and loot. Maybe bump them up a level or two, and you're good to go. With Mothership, it's harder. Stress and panic play a big part of the gameplay and the challenge faced by your character. And if someone next to you panics, you're more likely to panic. And that is mechanically built into the game, and it needs reflecting. And what I want to do is build in the crew as part of the solo gameplay. Now, Mothership is another bucket of D10s game, like Heroes and Hardships last week. Character creation, every stat is 6d10. So you're throwing a good handful of dice there. When you're looking at weapon damage, you've got 5d10s, 4d10, 3d10. These guys are 10 to 100, 20 to 200. So it's big handfuls of dice. But the flip side of that is the ethos of Mothership is avoid rolling dice. Role play everything. Dice are the last resort. In solo play, you end up rolling a lot of dice to answer questions. Yes, no questions are easy. Roll, you get a result. The open questions, what are they talking about? What's in the box? What does the diary say? These are harder, and they often require two rolls, two halves. You get two, say, a subject and a verb, and then you have to put them together and see how they work. In a game which wants you to avoid rolling, having to make multiple rolls every time you come up against a complex question, that doesn't really fit very well. If we look at this Mothership, basically all the mechanics fit onto this one page. You've got the basic mechanics here. Stress and panic, which is a big part of the game, comes up here with its criteria. The combat system, the procedure, their attacking. It's everything you need to play a game, solo game or a group, is condensed onto a single page, which is great. I love that. I used a kind of cheat sheet format on 3 Deep, one of the first games I showed you. So keeping it nice and condensed like this, but with a very few dice rolls, is the challenge. Now, the way I want to get around that is by at the top of each scene, you're going to throw, say, 6d10, and that becomes a pool of rolls. If you take any two sequential dice rolls. They give you your percentage rolls, and you can use the dice individually for your D10 rolls. This means that you've got, as soon as you start a scene, you make one roll, you've got 6 percentages, and you've got 6 individual rolls. You now don't have to roll every single time because you've got your rolls banked. Keeping with this kind of cheat sheet format, I'm taking a mechanic which I think was created by Ken Wickham. It features in a basic system, or ABS 12, and this was designed. Ken likes the D12 because it gives you about the biggest spread bar the D20 with no bell curve. Now his table here is 12 by 12, 144 options. What I have done is I've taken this, which is covered by the Open Game License, turned it into a 10 by 10 table, and then tweaked it to make it a bit more sci-fi specific. Now, the way it works is a 1 is sight, touch, taste, hearing, scent, thoughts, and so on. If your character were to pick up some alien food, you could take 2 of your pre-rolled numbers, and the first one would say be on the scent, the smell row. Let's say we rolled a 4 and a 5, so it would smell quite kind of floral. When you actually tasted it, the 5 gives you salty, so you can now instantly imagine this piece of alien food that your character's picked up. You're not having to make multiple rolls because the dice roll has already been made, but the entire open question mechanic is working off a single table. If the question was more generic, what's in the diary, then you would just take one roll for your column, one roll for your row, so row and column. So your 45 would give you 4 and 5 shout, and you take another 2, let's say 67 just for convenience, shout and measure. And you think, okay, I've got 2 words, shout and measure. What would that mean in a diary? If you're reading the log on the spaceship, was this person writing about being shouted at because he failed to take a measurement? You can work these words in using the context of the adventure, the genre, everything that's happened before, the sort of adventure you want, plus you get these hard points, the shout and measure, put them together, and what do they mean? So the one table does a lot of work, but it is nice and condensed, and you could sit this next to the player's cheat sheet. You've got your few rolls, and then you've got some space for the closed question mechanic, which they're always very, very simple. And that's it. That should be almost good to go. It's quite fast, it's quite light, quite visual. But the big problem that I struggled with was how to make the crew not cardboard cutout NPCs that do whatever you tell them to do. And somewhat in 2017, someone created the player emulator. In solo play, you are playing one character and you're emulating the game master. So, say taking the alien food question, normally you would ask the game master or the warden, what does the food taste like? You're emulating that by saying it smelt floral. It smelt very kind of floral, but it tasted salty. you're emulating the game master. Player emulation works the other way around. If you wanted to run a game, but you couldn't get any players for it. Maybe you wanted to practice running the game, practice the mechanics, see how they worked. You get player emulation. Now, this is the player emulator, and the instant problem I've got with this is everything I've worked on so far, I've tried to make it streamlined, light, compact, simple to use. The player emulator is 24 individual tables. You can't go from, oh yeah, let's make it all rules light and simple and minimal rolling, and then every time you reference any other member of your crew, you got to deal with 24 tables. Um, so I had to do something with this, and it's still work in progress, but this is working quite nicely. So what you're starting with is the agenda of the player and the character become one and the same. They're synonymous in this instance. So they have a basic agenda. We'll use focused for now. The player wants to play the game he signed up for. Do what's on his character sheet and avoid too much of any one game aspect. So if the crew member is a marine, then he wants to play the marine. Each scene you're going to, now this was 2d6, but I've shifted this into a even spread d10. You would roll, and if you rolled say a 10, you shift it back towards their main focus. So if you rolled over the 7, then you shift it down. If you rolled under the 7, you would shift it up. So the flashback is actually above it, so we drop it down to noble. The PC or the crew member expresses a noble facet of their character. So in this scene, your marine, for whatever reason, decides they're going to show a little bit of the noble quality of their character. Maybe if the scene calls for the marine to interrogate some stowaway or something, they're going to the whole Marine Corps kind of these elites, they're not thugs. That will come out. So you're starting with a core personality. Well, first of a core kind of behavior, and then each scene you're making one roll just to see how is that being reflected in that scene. When you're creating your crew members, where you rolled 6d10 for each stat, I've used that same philosophy, and you're rolling on some personality tags I've condensed several personality tags. There's a table of 36 here, and lurking at the bottom there's more personality tags there, so it provides you with 72. Plus there are other qualities. So I've condensed these down into you roll a bucket of dice, and then you go, okay, this is their main behavior, here's a few personality traits, so you know how to play the character, how this crew member, what they're like, to inform your role playing and your interaction with them. But their behavior changes, but is always similar to their regular behavior. They stay true to themselves, but They are inconsistent. So it is condensing all of this down into just a few roles. That is the big challenge. But it makes the um, crew independent of you, and I'm trying to keep it rules light. Now, this is taken parts of CRGE, Bold, Paradise Intersections, Apocalypse World. There are loads of influences that have been built into this, and that's one of the interesting things actually in this whole project. That there's influences from Mothership itself. There's influences from ABS 12. Um, there's influences from previous solar systems I've worked on. It is coming up with, to get it just right, I'm having to draw from loads of different sources and inspirations, and lots of other people's work. It is the product of everything that's come before it, and it is going to be probably the most sophisticated set of solo rules I've ever made. Um, one of the influences actually has come from Zweihander, but by the time that feeds through to the final product, it probably won't be that recognizable. But it has that same kind of grim, dark, where it's dark fantasy. This is dark science fiction. This is horror sci-fi role playing. So this is what I'm working on now, and it is a big task. It's a quite a challenge, but an interesting one. And yeah, so I think the takeaway this time is about how many different sources I've had to use, and rather than in reinventing the wheel, I'm trying to take stuff that I know works and I have used in the past and try to adapt it. Okay, so well, that's it for this week, and see you next week.